Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So today's video, we're going to be visiting and continuing on the topic of the solo player. I have seen some of my viewers tell me that I don't play solo, so they would not value my opinion. And to that I say, it seems like we've moved so far into the game that we've forgotten that the 3 most watched videos on my channel are videos that are directed towards solo players. I'm an avid solo player to the point that I created a second division account so that I could play solo. Once in a while, I want to be a recluse, so that's why I do that. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at a few improvements that I feel like will benefit the Division 2 solo player experience. And these are not foreign. These are actually from the Division 1. Imagine that. These were systems that were placed in the Division 1 that actually allowed for the experience to be much better as a solo player. Now, I was running around just being silly and looking and trying to compare what made the solo experience fun with Tom Clancy's The Division 1 and what makes a lot of the community not necessarily enjoy the experience right now. Well, if you look back in the day, you can basically look all the way back to maybe like patch 1.8. The game was in the end of life. Everybody got super strong. But there were some key aspects that I noticed that had nothing to do with classified gear sets and had nothing to do with, maybe the enemy damage and all that stuff. I'm not referencing those things. I'm referencing systems that will definitely tune the experience and make it so much better that if I keep talking and not tell you what they are, you guys are going to be mad at me. Anyways, the first one is grenades and armor kits. I'd lump this both together because these are resources that the developers, for some reason, it may have trivialized and don't understand how much of a game-changing experience these are. Example, today, as of the day I'm recording this video, I ran 3 heroic strongholds. These are the longest and most difficult of the strongholds before you get to legendary. I would say these are very difficult. Now, I say some will say that heroic open world activities are more difficult, but you have to remember permadeath is a factor. So I think that kind of evens out, even though I know heroic open world is a mess because it's chaotic. But I started getting all kinds of crazy drops of grenades that were not in my specialization. Massive. Fix your game. This is the place where if I'm going to get a grenade drop, it needs to be a grenade dropped in my specialization. And so because of the way the specialization systems are, it is very, very important for somebody like me who has taken on the survivalist to try to run my missions to have my grenades when they finally drop. Because first of all, they're scarce. They don't even drop as you progress through the mission. They start getting, much less. I can understand that, but at least if I'm getting them frequently to be consistent to my specialization, it will definitely change the game, make the experience fun for the solo player. Now, I'm not saying increase the drop frequency, but honestly, if you did, they're massive. It will enhance the experience for your players. This is something that somebody can understand. If I'm playing against the Black Tusks and I've taken the time to go get the technician specialization, those grenades will come in very handy. Why? Enemy NPCs seem to have an unlimited amount of resources that they can use against us. And I understand the challenge is part of taking out some of the more important enemy NPCs and making decisions on the fly. But it's nice as a solo player to have those things. And this is a modifier that can make sense. And Massive says they want the solo player experience to be more difficult. Then give things like this to the solo player, because it definitely changes the game like tremendously. I remember just playing this mission, Watergate Power Plant, and I got grenades dropping from me all the time whenever I took down a certain number of NPCs. It was a good feeling to have that at my disposal. And even though the division didn't have the more specialized grenades, it was nice to just get a grenade anyways, because that can help you, knock enemies off their balance or their focus off of you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the first aid skill. Now, many of you are probably thinking, what is he talking about? This is not the support station. And I can understand that many have said the support station seems better, but I think that might need to be a more specific modification of the Hive. The Hive does basically, or is supposed to do what the support station was doing, but it's not doing that, in the Division 2 as well as it did in Division 1. What I'm talking about is a skill that allowed for you to be able to pop a instant boost of healing, and it had 4 different modifiers. This gave you a healing ability that you instantly gained as you were running through the mission. The modifiers had different things attached to them. One of the most important ones for a lot of PvP players was, I think, the booster. In terms of that, the booster shot, this gave you more weapon damage, and I think it gave you a little bit more weapon damage resistance and all. Now, in regard to the specifics of how these will work, I don't think I'm here to argue that, but I think having a way to instantly heal yourself, at least with some kind of a cooldown, makes a lot of sense for the progression of the game. Even in a group play, it's nice for you to be able to get a burst of healing for yourself and not have to always use this very tedious mechanic of the armor kit. Now, I know many of us are already used to the armor kit, but from the footage that you're watching, I pop my med kits and just like that, they go. And I understand we have system corruption, but system corruption is not for PVE. So we're still at an impasse where we don't have a system that could definitely change the game for us. And I think this can actually come in the next season, actually, because now what we're getting is we're getting mods for some of the skills that we got from agents. Why don't the developers go ahead and add another skill mod and make this even the first stage? This is definitely something that would change the game for a lot of solo play. The next thing is not necessarily only for solo play, but I feel like will make gameplay generally more enjoyable and much fun. This is something that can be made as a change without actually having to go tweak enemy health values and armor and damage values. I'm of the mind that the enemy damage and damage and armor values right now need much more than just being tuned down, because if it gets tuned down, we're going to get back to TU7 and everyone's going to be complaining. Not everyone, but most are going to be complaining that there's nothing to do. So that needs to be looked at in a different way. I think armor is a conversation that we can have regarding enemy damage output, but this is how much your impact actually makes against enemy NPCs. Now, let me explain. If an enemy NPC is about to toss a grenade, you can shoot that enemy NPC and knock them off their balance and they drop the grenades on themselves. But what I noticed is this only works up to a specific level of difficulty. After you get to a level of difficulty, when you're firing an NPC that's about to toss a grenade, it doesn't matter at all. I think this should matter on every single difficulty. And when the enemy drops a grenade on themselves, that grenade needs to at least have a severe impact. They should not always 100% jump out of the way of their own grenades every time. Now, yes, I can understand for difficulty's sake. I can understand for the sake of always, making the game have some level of depth to the mechanics that, more experienced or veteran NPCs can dodge that mechanic. But I think it's too much. I think at least for every 5 enemy NPCs that tries to throw a grenade at you that you fire at, 100% of them should drop their grenade, and then at least 50% of them should be impacted by their grenade. Now, this system does work depending as well on the kind of damage that you deal. I've noticed, but I feel like every single bullet should matter, and the damage factor that you have to deal to these veteran NPCs or elite NPCs at higher levels should be lowered down. Again, shotguns should also have bullet impact like it did in the Division 1. Whenever enemy NPCs rushed you, if you hit them with a shotgun in Division 1, it knocked them off their balance, it knocked them off their aim, and it knocked them off, their activities that they were doing. I don't see this system much in the Division 2. It's there, very slight, but it's not consistent and it's not impactful. As a solo player, when you're in group play, you should be able to have that kind of power. Shotguns right now are just known basically for huge damage dealing. Back in the Division 1, they had that kind of knockback factor that it even made its way to PvP, and the developers had to actually talk about, maybe removing that system. I think now in PvE it is very important because it will add another layer of weapon diversity to the game, and then also something that helps solo players as well. I can understand maybe assault, rifles, or maybe, SMGs or LMGs not having that much of the privilege, but at least marksman rifles should almost 100% knock any NPC on impact, regardless of them being a heavy or whatever. If you're landing that kind of damage, it needs to show not only in numbers, but also in physical animation of your enemy NPCs. And then the final one is just basically a small preference of mine, and that is the mobile cover skill. This is a skill that allowed for you to be able to place a mobile cover out in, any area that you wanted. And this is something that I feel will help a lot of agents if they're running perhaps, some of these missions that are designed to kind of stretch your creativity, especially in the more difficult aspects. Examples are legendary missions. If you maybe go into Roosevelt Island in legendary, it's very awkward to trying to find cover. Yes, you can pull enemy NPCs out and all, but there are places where mobile cover can work. Even Capitol Building is designed to stretch the imagination of the player, but the mobile cover can really create some good barriers for enemy, against enemy NPCs. And I understand this used to be a problem because people would glitch it back in the day, and the developers have not returned to it in a long time. But I hope the developers can actually pay attention to these little mechanics that can be incrementally made and not necessarily have to feel, that they need to maybe go tweak the game and then everything becomes easy. Because if you guys remember, Yannick said one thing about nerfing enemy damage output and enemy health is you can nerf it. The problem is if you go nerf it and it becomes too easy, what happens is you can never revert it back. So once the game becomes super easy, for them to then say, oh, the game has become easy, let's make the enemies much more difficult, the community is going to flip. Case in point, Title Update 9. Title Update 7, the game was actually much easier. And then once Title Update 8 came around, they went ahead and increased the enemy damage output and armor. And guess what? Exactly that happened. But it was necessary that the game got some difficulty, but at the same time, tuning that difficulty way high without giving some really nice quality of life things that could have changed the perception of the player, or at least help the player, that are gameplay mechanics that are interesting. I think this would have definitely bring everybody to the middle ground. So these are my suggestions. I'm not here to just say the game is trash and not provide solutions. It's easy to actually critique, but it's much more difficult to provide a solution to the problem. It's up to the developers if they listen. I'm going to just continue, taking my ball and playing in my little corner over here. And at least, hopefully, we can get a game that's actually solid. So let me hear your comments in the comment section. Let me hear your thoughts. I appreciate you guys this time and audience. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.